Welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. I have a special guest with me today, co-founder and executive director of Equitable Giving Circle, AJ McCreary.
Hi.
Hi,
Thanks for
AJ.
having me.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
Good. Glad it's Thursday. Thursday, right?
So, for those who don't know AJ, but maybe if you've driven around Portland the last few months, you've most likely, even now it's July. Yes, July.
Yeah.
We're there. You probably still see AJ McCreary for Portland signs. Like, obviously, I know it's not the most fun subject to bring up because the city council race didn't go as obviously you would have liked. But I think it's safe to say you made a pretty positive impact on the race, on the city. And I know just for me personally, like, you really made an impression on me in terms of just like, I think you have a real talent for like communicating the nuts and bolts of politics that's needed, not just like where we need to go with a lot of like progressive issues, but also like how to actually get there. And I think it's a much needed thing. From our talks before, obviously I've tried to kind of like nudge you a little bit to be like, "Ooh, can we get like an AJ's Corner segment?" And, I promise I'll try, as I just did it again, I promise I'll try not to as much. But
I will say, just like the city council race, I always do actually appreciate those professional nudges to like stretch or try something different. I don't know if I can commit in this moment to that, but I do appreciate like the opportunity to come in and talk and the compliment like about my voice and my understanding of knowing politics and like to break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think this is a great time to talk because we're heading into, nationally heading into the midterms. And there's a lot of people who are very, very disillusioned, very, I think rightfully cynical about the state of politics, especially on the left right now. And, wondering, especially like, why should I vote? Like, Joe Biden is just,
Well, Joe Biden is terrible. So we'll just put that out there for everybody to know. He's not doing a great job. I don't think anyone's surprised, though. Oh. And we do have to vote.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
If you just had like a message for people who are kind of in that cynicism right now, like, is there something you might want to impart just to get people,
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I would say. One, we do have a democracy. Let's participate in it. Like, it's critical that we participate in it, even if we don't believe in the system and we don't agree. We do have to participate. We cannot change anything with just protesting in the street or not participating. Like a protest vote does nothing except pushes us further into things that we don't agree with. Here in Portland and Oregon, it's not very much effort to vote. Ballots come to our house. You can do your voting literally anywhere in your bed while eating, while watching a silly movie. You can take it very seriously. The option is yours, but you can do it at the privacy of your home. You can do it on the go in your car. And then you can even just have your mail person pick it up or drop it off at the ballot box or at the ballot office. So we have a lot of options and ease in that way. So here in Portland, in this very liberal place, there's no excuse for us not to be voting. And more importantly, I would say anybody that thinks that they are their ancestors' wildest dream, that thinks that they are really being, a part of this liberation work, our ancestors fought very, very hard for the right to vote. If you're a Black or brown person, if you are an immigrant or second generation, if you are a woman, our rights to vote are new, they're fresh. Use that shit. Use that right. It's really critical. And it's irresponsible. Like when people are like, I'm not going to vote because blah, blah, blah. I don't believe in the system. I don't believe in the system. And I ran for public office. I will vote because I know that all of my ancestors did not have the opportunity, the luxury, or the privilege to vote. And I am doing them a disservice in all of their work, their legacy, and their intentions if I don't vote. And like all of my my Black ancestors, all of my Indigenous ancestors, all of my women ancestors. It is my responsibility to them to vote. So I don't believe in the system, probably as much as many people who are listening to this also don't believe in the system, but we can't change it by a protest vote or not participating. In Portland and in Oregon, it takes no effort to vote. And we're a millennial city. We could show up and show out and like change the whole game. I'd also say that like we will not get interesting, capable, different candidates to show up and show out if we are too lazy as a population to vote for them. Because I was not the first younger, progressive, out of the box, non-career politician person to run for public office in Portland. I won't be the last. I am not special in that way. There's nothing about me in that way that's special. And yes, 45,000 people showed up. It's like, it's like a third, 30% of the vote. But how are you going to attract more people to come and do this work and like running a campaign? You don't get paid for that. So it's like a very, very full-time, months worth of labor. We're going to have a hard time attracting more people if we are too lazy to show up. In just Portland's primaries, 220,000 people showed up to vote. And this is important. There's 800,000 people in Portland, 550,000 people registered to vote, and 220,000 people showed up. About 50,000 people of that did vote in that race did not vote in my race, so they downvoted. If they had voted or been like, let me just vote on somebody different, I would have went to the primary I would have went to the general election and we would see something different. I don't think that people are understanding these nuances in this space. And this is really important to understand. Primaries do really dictate who is in that the general election, and midterm elections are critical. A lot of things sneak through during midterm elections, and so this isn't even about me because like I am glad that like I am not personally going to be responsible to clean up this housing issue that the boomers have totally fucked up. This is all boomer policy. When you go outside and you see these things that are not working, whether it's schools, housing issues, mental health issues, lack of services, food insecurities, on and on and on, even our public transit going to shit. This is all boomer policy. Boomers have been in charge for 40-something years and poorly. Just poorly. And if you're offended by that, good job. Congratulations. Hold that dear. And maybe ponder why you're offended and maybe do better, be better. But I'm glad I'm not responsible for that. Like, because it's overwhelming, like what that generation has done. But also like, we have to show up, and it's going to be a big, like this election is going to really, really dictate the future of the United States. Like I said that midway through my race, very much like we are really going to see where America is at. We're really going to see where Portland is at by who we vote for, what's happening, who shows up, and how we show up. And we're going to see that even more so in November. And I think it's really important for younger folks, particularly millennials, to start getting involved. I know that we as a generation, we are not, as many of us are not as parents as maybe we all want to be. We are not homeowners. We are not property owners at all. We might have a fancy title without necessarily the resources that come with it. Like these are things that our generation is actively experiencing. And the ways that we change it is start showing up as a collective and voting these motherfuckers out. Well, am I not allowed to cuss?
AJ's Corner, everyone. Also, for the record, technically no.
I'm so sorry.
But we can. Oh, it's fine. Ado's got that. Ado's got the edits, and that was the other reason. Is one, you are great at explaining these things and how we get there, and also, the filter is really not something you worry about, which I appreciate.
I've always been a loudmouth. I was like trained up to be a loudmouth.
But to that end though, because like I said, you're running for office for the first time, and I've been aware of Equitable Giving Circle for a little bit, but like I said, your campaign was really the opportunity, and specifically, I want to shout out Amber Boydston because we did an event. That's kind of where I met you at. But,
Amber's amazing. If you don't know about Spirit of Justice and the work that they're doing, please check them out. They are a really amazing abolitionist group that does a lot of immediate direct care for folks, especially folks in active crisis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I found out it's like, there's like a degree of separation because, and I'm wondering if people tell you this all the time. It's like, oh, you're Hobbs' mom?
I'm Hobbs' mom.
Because, for those who don't know Hobbs, like this, young prodigy.
He's a ballet dancer, a visual artist, an activist, a young philanthropist. Well, he's not necessarily using his own dollars. He works for a philanthropy company, doing development. He's his second year of college, or second semester, at Mount Hood Community College. He's 15. Yeah, he's pretty amazing.
No big deal.
No big deal.
15.
He is a big deal. It's weird.
I remember seeing, I think, some of his artwork for another person, shout out Mr. Bobby Fowler, one of his exhibits like years ago. And my roommate also is in like sort of like the dance teaching world. So they knew about Hobbs a little bit too. So yeah, when I made that connection, it's like, oh, wow. But this makes sense.
Hobbs is.
So you do get recognized probably as Hobbs' mom more, but.
Yeah, it's interesting because people at this point either know me like Hobbs' mom, mutual aid, or activism. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like people, they're often surprised. They're like, wait, oh, you guys are connected? Or they know me through EGC. And then there's people that just know me like because I grew up in Portland. And there's that, like being a long time, forever resident. I have left and come back. Keep coming.
We're going to get back to that, and specifically some of the lessons you've taken from other places. Let's talk about Equitable Giving Circle for a little bit. Can you talk, when did the group start?
We officially started conversing in December of 2019. I had participated in a different giving circle in town that just really didn't resonate with my soul. It was just sort of like white ladies, white lady. And it wasn't an equitable thing, and it wasn't something, there was like a lot of hoopla. Like I love the concept of what they were talking about, but it just didn't like translate into real life or an experience. And I was like, I'm just not rocking with this. And I was in a different space that we were talking about racism. And I was like, if y'all going to subject me to like having this strange, unorganized kumbaya foolery, let's actually like do something with this energy. Let's go somewhere with it. So we originally were talking about creating a giving circle that hyper-focused around Black and brown women and femmes in business and doing like business showers, little cash grants, kind of just like ways that we can be supportive because this was a collective of women and femmes in business. And then, so we were chatting about that for a couple months and trying to get this together. What would this look like? What would it feel like? Blah, blah, blah. And then the pandemic had happened. And I had just been at an event called the Black Growers Gathering and was very inspired by meeting all of these Black and brown farmers and food purveyors, because farmers are really amazing people. Like they know lots of things. They're very generous. They're just, I don't know, being around farmers is just kind of like reminds me of being a kid at like a field trip. It's just like, oh, I'm going to learn something. You might get a good snack. So I was like, y'all, business, all this things is happening. The pandemic was just about to like pop off. And I proposed to our group, well, let's put this on hold. Let's buy CSA boxes from Black and brown farmers and give them away to Black and brown families who are going to feel this pandemic really hard, because the group is also, a lot of us are moms or caregivers of some kind. And so it's like, we were all very much as business-minded people seeing what is about to happen. Group loved the idea. And we did all the things to launch a fundraiser, and we were going to support 50 families through the summer with summer CSA boxes. And in a week of launching our fundraiser, we'd raised over, it was like $35,000. And people just loved this idea. And being the person I am, and I'm not allowed to go to Vegas, because I was like, let's double down. Let's do 100 boxes. It'll be great. And it was. We easily covered the funds to do 100 boxes for the summer for families. And then from there, it just kind of grew. We got an opportunity to get $350,000 from the city. And then it was just like, it just kind of spiraled. And our goals of supporting just women and femmes in business really changed. So now we're feeding Black and brown families. We feed about a little over 300 through our home delivery. And then also we have a weekly pantry. So today our pantry is happening at Alder Commons. It goes from 10 to 2 every day. So I guess it's about wrapping up right now. But so we just, kind of really got into the weeds doing that food justice work. We work intentionally with Black and brown business owners. So we buy from Black and brown farmers, but like our insurance agent is a Black woman. We have 2 insurance agents. Both of them are Black. We're intentionally working with Black and brown folks in other professional spaces that we need to spend money. Very intentional in that way. So still like at the core doing what we set out to do, but it has taken a different shift. We have a housing program that we're looking for more dollars for. We've put about $200,000 into the community in 3-month rent and mortgage relief grants. And then we also host community events. We have a monthly lunch and learn, a monthly happy hour conversation. And then I host, not every month, but fairly regularly, probably going to like break it down to quarterly, just a conversation about money and economics and what EGC is doing with our money. And then we have large community events. So like we've this season, we've all just kind of like need a little bit of space because we've done so much the last 2 years, but we had a big Mother's Day event, which is like going to turn into an annual thing. We'll have a large back to school event in August. So we have 3 branches: community wellness, food justice, and housing. And it has grown. We've raised over $5 million in cash and in-kind donations. During the last 5 years, we have served over 25,000 people. Part of our community wellness, inspired by the underground plant trade, we collect plants and give them away to Black and brown people. So that's one of the ways we've served so many people, and people have interacted with us. And at the core of what we do, we are all about like having the best for our community. Black and brown people have been forced to take sort of leftovers or scraps. If you are not aware of the experience people had in chattel slavery, when white people enslaved Black folks as property, part of that experience for people that were enslaved was getting leftovers, getting scraps. And that is a legacy that has carried on through charity work or nonprofit work. And EGC is not about that. So we don't do any expired things. We really do believe in the best. The plants have been a really great way to help like teach people about that like conversation, and really kind of teach the experience of sharing and sharing nice things. And I guess we're kind of like the bougie nonprofit of Portland. And I love that because, I worked in boutiques for a long time. I like fancy things at, used prices, for me personally. And I want our community to always be reminded that they are valuable and deserve nice things.
Yeah, when you talk about sort of like this idea that kind of carried over from slavery, or specifically around just normalizing us taking scraps and everything, I think there's a lot of pervasive myths around fundraising, especially out here in Portland metro area, because so many people are involved in the nonprofit industrial complex, and but not necessarily people get into this work. Well, a lot of people, maybe not all, maybe not most, but a lot of people get into this work as just like a grassroots thing, or something that just kind of like started on like a shoestring level. But there's certain like experiences, whether it be accounting or like career development, personnel management. Like these are like real skills that people go to school for, that people are apprentice under other people for, that we don't, again, because people are working kind of like on this shoestring level, that they have to either learn later or don't learn, or learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just ask you, what are some of the most pervasive myths around fundraising that you run into? Actually, let me ask you before we get into like some other ones. Like, I feel like people don't understand how much money is really out there. Not to answer my own question, but I just set you up with that one.
People are very unaware of how much money is out there and that people want to give. We are all trained, whether it was very intentional or just subconsciously have been trained in a scarcity mentality, so that there's not enough resources and that everybody is going to be stingy. Yes, those people exist, unfortunately, but there's lots of generous people that do want to be a part of the solutions and that do want to give. And there's lots of money that goes untapped. I will, like, scholarships is one. There's a lot of money that is like slated for Black or brown students. And then often if they don't apply, then like white kids end up getting the opportunity. Or that scholarship money will just go back in the pot. That happens with like city, state, and federal grants. It happens with foundations. And then there's also private philanthropy. I think also there is tons of regular people that are not rich by any means that are open and willing to share, even if it's small amounts. And it's just part of like being able to ask and talk about it. We are not in a society that's like comfortable or used to talking about money, like how much I make, how much I donated, how much my rent is, whatever. And I think that's kind of part of the problem. Like we have to break down those money wounds. And that's all by design. Capitalism wants us to not talk about our money, to be really funny about it, and to, like, this is a taboo conversation. It's not. This is a resource. And like, we have different resources. But because of that culture of not talking about money and, just having all of these walls up around it, it makes it really complex. It's also that we're not used to, being comfortable with like no or yes ands, or we exist in this world where everything has to be black or white, right? It has to be this way or that way. In fundraising, you're going to hear lots of no's or circle back or what about this, or I can do this, or maybe let me introduce you to somebody. I use my fundraiser that my son had. He is a classically trained ballet dancer, and it is very expensive. And as a single parent, I have never had the full funds to, fund his dream. And luckily, we've had amazing community members, people that we know and don't know. I was just talking to one of my mentors about one of my kid's biggest donors is somebody named Cable that I've never met. I've never even been on a phone with this person. I've had maybe like 2 email conversations, and they have donated significant amount of dollars. When kid got a scholarship to the San Francisco Ballet Summer Intensive, which just the scholarship part was amazing, but we had to get there. We had to be able to eat for 3.5 weeks. It means I'm not working for 3.5 weeks. He was also 13 when we went. We had to stay in downtown San Francisco. I don't drive, so it's not like I could also we could be somewhere else. And then so this is a very expensive trip. This is a person who never even met my kid, who's just like, I really love what this kid's doing and I'm going to make a donation. And talking to my mentor about it, and she was just like, I think that happens more often than not. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, if you are really passionate about what you're doing, and there are strangers that want to help you. There are people that will go above and beyond. And for me, that was such a transformational experience. The reason I ended up talking to this individual is because in San Francisco, they don't have fresh orange juice for whatever fucking reason. And they don't. This was a whole joke while we were there. And I complained to a friend of mine who knows this person. And then this person emailed me, was like, do you need more money? Because I was like, why is orange juice non-existent and so expensive here? And it was just this very interesting, wow, there's so many resources and people that care. And because people understand, I want to help fund this new idea or this artist, or I want somebody to have an opportunity that I didn't have. So I think we have to really, and I love reflecting on that, this individual that I always remember, I kind of don't ever want to meet them either, right? That's part of the magic, is that it would be cool to run into them organically or something. I know what they look like based off of their Twitter picture. But I think it's like, for me, it's just like such a, wow, there is this way that people care and want to show up and support. And I mean, this is a Black man who now has resources and literally is the very little that I know is that this is because he didn't have somebody who just invested in him blindly. And that's really powerful. And that's like goes for anything that we're wanting to do. And I think part of it is just asking, right? Like, it's interesting just to think about how in that whole experience of fundraising for this very expensive trip, it happened because of strangers, and it happened because we were able to just like ask and trust that it was going to happen. And me as a single parent of having to like be like fundraise for my kid in this other way and kind of navigate stuff in a different way has been really informative in my experience around money. You got to break down your money wounds. I mean, that trip to San Francisco for me too was just like, I really had to get over myself in a different way than other fundraising because it was such a big trip and it was so expensive. And also really like be willing to accept funds. Because I think that's also part of this. When you're fundraising, whether it's for an individual project or for something bigger, or even for like, I fundraise on behalf of community, you have to be really open to the experience and the questions and the conversation. And I think because of our money wounds, because of historically in this country, because of capitalism, we're just not open. Yeah, but there's money out there. We raised, $5 million during a global pandemic, and that is in-kind donations and cash, but the cash has been almost $4 million in actual dollars, and there is money available. And Portland has a lot of money.
Yeah, you're kind of getting to that point again about connecting those dots, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, take for granted how much of a skill fundraising really is and how much of a, effort it really is.
I will say this, it's a skill, but it's learnable. Like there's some things that it's like, you really do need a natural talent to do, right? Like to be really great at, say, basketball, right? There is some level of your natural talent that you need to show up. Ballet, you can be technical all day, whatever, but there is some level of natural ability and talent to really get to that next level. Fundraising, anybody can learn this. It's literally being able to show up consistently, to be asked questions, and to be persistent. And like not to let no's get in your feelings or bother you. Like you're gonna hear no's. But fun fact, anything you do, you're gonna hear no's. And there's not enough people or young people that are in this space that are, and I say young people and really referring to millennials. And it's funny, I'm doing exactly what I was like grumpy about on the campaign because we're young compared to like the likes of Joe Biden. Like, dude is a dinosaur and we are like freshly out of diapers, and we're like, that's our comparison. And Jenny Elsley that's listening to this, like, my bad, I love you, but dude is old. We just have to start getting into the habit of asking and talking about it. We're also, something that's happening right now during this global pandemic that is still happening is that we are in the midst of the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in the history of humans. And what that means is that boomers and the silent generation are dying, and they are passing their wealth to their children or to wherever they're putting it. And so that because of the pandemic has actually been sped up. So there's a lot of money that is available and floating around. And it's really about just connecting and being persistent, like really being a regular, like asking, we're doing this thing, and just not caring. In some ways, I feel like fundraising is like dating. You just have to keep trying.
I guess, like I said, because I feel like I'm definitely guilty of this, where I kind of get caught up in the frustration around fundraising sometimes of like, I grew up in Lake Oswego, involved with Respond to Racism LO, and, I see all the money that's out there beyond just like institutions, but as far as individuals, and like all you people who keep saying you care about diversity so much, you're so incensed about the latest racist story you saw on the news or something, and you have the money to like support these programs and support these efforts, but there's always an excuse. But then the other side of it, it's like also able to, meet, rub shoulders with a lot of like Black professionals that, are not as widely known in Portland as, other people, where I also see people saying, I care about the work you're doing, or I'm support it. But there's also a lot of, how can I put this in the most diplomatic sense? Um, there's a lot of just ill will from dealing with, other maybe more established nonprofits in the past, or like some of the shenanigans that have happened where people are like, yeah, I don't feel like I can trust these things, whether that's fair or not. I don't know, but
Well, I think that's like something that we have to do as a collective to like break some of those like around money, these cultural issues that we have with it. So yes, there are lots of people that want to talk about racism, but they're afraid to invest in dismantling it. And that is really in people's like own individual journeys with decolonizing and wealth redistribution. And part of that for us as a collective is we have to get used to talking about it, right? It's really interesting to me as a person who does DEI work, and that's what I was doing before EGC as a consultant. A lot of people, if they have to put on a training, say something happens at their business or their establishment, and it's a safety violation, right? And they get a fine. They will happily, quickly schedule whatever OSHA training they have to. And OSHA is just like the government body that like cares about safety, makes sure that like things are ADA compliant, it's fire safe and all this, whatever. I don't know what the acronym stands for in this moment. But it's a regulatory body, and it's interesting. People will pay for the safety trainings. They'll pay for whatever things they have to, like OSHA, they're going to come, they're going to involved. And in my development work, I've worked a lot with issues around like people just not having fire safe stuff, or like they didn't put a mat down. Now they're getting sued because they didn't have the proper whatever on marble flooring and it rains here. Obviously it's going to end badly. But like people will pay money for that. And we don't have the culture or the pressure of being like, you also need to put that same energy into paying for anti-racism training, anti-racism work, and really investing in that. And that's also part of us in our conversation. I will say any Black professional that just got it together and is like doing really well, I'm not coming for them. Yes, you should donate and you should participate and you should find the lane that makes sense for you. But I'm also going to be really realistic about culturally and historically. And also it's very likely that anybody that's Black, brown, or is like part of a immigrant family is probably spending that money helping a younger person in their own interpersonal community come up, spending money to help mom or grandmother survive, or sending money to another country. And we're very closed about those realities. Like we're very uncomfortable talking about that because it's still very taboo. So I'm not going to come for Black professionals, particularly that have just sort of kind of made it. And often Black professionals that might have a fancy title, their salaries don't always truly match what it should be. But to the point of like been burned or don't like nonprofit, like the complex, the nonprofit complex and what's happening here. Donate to mutual aid. Be like Cable and find a kid that you're down to invest in, right? Like you really love basketball and maybe you weren't able to go to basketball camp. Well, so make sure that you donate to an organization to make sure that kids can go to basketball camp. I know this woman I got to work with this past year, she's like, her and her husband have a band and like they've been really into like rock and roll music. And she had a really good friend from teenager that they were really in, like, I think they're a band at one point, and this is their whole life is kind of like into live music and stuff. And when her friend passed away, and she's a Black woman that passed away, unfortunately, her whole friend circle, the way that they've honored her existence, her legacy, has been sending kids to young Black girls that are interested in like rock and roll camp or music camps to camps, right? And so they're not really paying into any sort of complex. They're literally being very intentional about this legacy, this individual who this is kind of the work that she did when she was alive, and they're honoring it. So there are tons of ways. Like if you're into art, you're into basketball, maybe you just really grateful that you got to college, donate to a scholarship fund. Or you know a college student, give them $200. Just be like, I got a textbook. As somebody who just paid for a first semester of term of college, yes, send that college student a Venmo. Be like, do you just take $70? Like whatever it is, even $25. I think part of it is like we have to unpack our own money wounds and our relationship with money. And we also have to like be really realistic. Like we can't take this money with when we go. It's not coming with us. Like our spirit goes somewhere and that's it. That relationship ends. And we are not our ancestors' wildest dreams, unless we are really actually living in a very different intentional way. And liberation work at its core has to do with money because chattel slavery was about cash. People were cash. People were rented, they were sold, they were bought, they were bred. It's fucked up history. Again, sorry with the cursing, but it was really, as a historian, I'm just like, how we're not addressing that. Our country has never reconciled the reality of chattel slavery. The globe hasn't. That's why we have fast fashion. That's why we have like minimum wage. It's all rooted in that. We've never reconciled our books. We've never made these adjustments. And the little ways that we can as an individual is to intentionally invest in the next generation, invest in individuals. And there's tons of ways that whoever you are can combat your own money relationship. And you can say, I'm not interested in, funding Save the Frogs, which is a thing that happens over by Sophie's Island. It's a whole nonprofit that saves frogs. They're not even endangered. No offense to the frogs or anything, but it's very strange to me that this is like happening. Yes, say no to that, but you could say yes to a student. You could say, yeah, you could, my mentor, something that her and her partner do is they fund classrooms. So they don't necessarily donate to, they donate to lots of folks, but every year for decades now, they have wrote checks to an individual teacher. So like the whole point of them, I mean, at this point, having a Costco membership, because it's just two people, is that they can go and buy the snacks for these various classrooms or like the supplies. And they'll write checks, but they'll also take lists and go shopping and deliver. So like there's tons of ways to share our resources in ways that are meaningful for us. So part of it is just this all like being intentional. One of my friends has worked up to being able to give 20% of his income to mutual aid, individuals, nonprofits, but like he intentionally gives 20% of his income. This is something he's like spent years working towards. I think we can all be really intentional and find like different ways that we can give back. Well, again, whether it's an individual or being a monthly donor. If you want to be a monthly donor at EGC, equitablegivingcircle.org, I will happily take your dollars. But like, there's tons of ways to participate and to avoid the nonprofit situation or avoid politics, but to still be an active participant in sharing resources. And at the end of the day, like liberation work is about capitalism and the way that we combat capitalism and this insane scarcity model that we exist in is sharing. Yeah, it was a long loop-de-loop.
Oh. Again, the push for AJ's Corner, like it's writing itself here. But do you think it'd be fair to say that, being again that grew up in Portland, but you've also lived in other places, and can you just talk about like what were those other places?
So I briefly lived outside of DC as a teenager, and that was very different. And partly like the thing that I noticed about living in that part of the country, it's very transitional. And so people come and go relatively quickly around administrations, around like DC jobs that have a very different expiration date. So the way that they build community there is very different. I went to college in New Orleans, and then I went back down there with my kid. And New Orleans is I lived there pre-Katrina and post-Katrina. It builds community in a very different way. And city pride is something that like Portland just could really take a lesson in. I do say that, like, particularly living in New Orleans and in the Deep South, I've also lived in Texas, really has impacted like the way that I think about building and intentionality. Um, like New Orleans is such an interesting place. You have to experience it. I don't even know how to like, I'm not the person to explain like community and like the collective there. But what I can tell you about, like, when I moved from New Orleans with my child, we literally spent a day and a half going to all of these different businesses and different places just to let them know that we're not dying, that we were just moving. So we went to all like these just places that we frequented regularly, both in our neighborhood and just throughout the city. And it was like something I knew I intentionally had to do. We did not go back to New Orleans for like 2 years. And then we went and we were there for like 2 weeks. And I kid you not, this happened more than once. We were walking down the street, and we did live in the French Quarter for a chunk of time, which was like a dream of mine and was a really magical experience. And New Orleans is way more than just Mardi Gras and boobs. It is. It's way more than that. We were walking down the street, and my child is, kids grow, right? He's 2 years older, bigger, looks different. I have people that ran out of their shop. Is that AJ and Hobbs? Is that? And I was like, y'all remember? Like, we haven't been here in 2 years. I didn't write you a letter or anything, but like, that is the way that community is. There's a place called the Cake Cafe, and I had worked right by there for a good amount of time. And when I say we went in there just like to get a little cupcake, because they do have these amazing cupcakes. If you're in New Orleans, go to the Cake Cafe in the Marigny. When I tell you the entire back came out to say hi to us and like marvel at how much my child had grown. Like, it was the most, to this, I still get chills. Like, the community building is so intentional, and people, I will say part of it is just like a slower model there, right? Like, people can take just a minute to say hi. We in Portland, like, we talk about that we're this liberal, progressive, small business place, but we won't look each other in the eye and say hi. We want things to happen and exist, but then we're too lazy, too busy, too tired, whatever, to show up. And the big difference that I know about New Orleans is the concept of you have to be in community to have community is not lost there. Here in Portland, we struggle with that reality. Like, to have community, you have to be in community. And to be in community means that you have community. It means you cannot have community just from your phone, from Instagram or Facebook. And I'm not knocking social media, because it is a very amazing, helpful tool. But we actually have to be around each other and build and regularly contribute and regularly show up. And that is something that really we're struggling with here in Portland. And I mean, it's just a very different intentionality. Like, I also use Mardi Gras parades, right? So I lived on a parade route for a while off of St. Charles. In my balcony, you could see the parade. So we live in the prime place for that, to parade, and parades are a big deal during Mardi Gras. And during Mardi Gras, you become friends with whoever you're parading next to. So we would go to St. Charles, but you could see my apartment. The amount of people that I brought into my home, strangers, complete strangers, you would never do this in Portland. This is just, people were like, you lost your mind? I literally would bring, tons of different, like, other people into my home so they could use a bathroom because it was right there. Oh, come on, bring your kid, whatever. Do you need some water? Do you need a minute to sit down? Like, it's fine. Like, I ended up watching a parade on my balcony with this mom and her little kids because they were overwhelmed, but like, one kid didn't want to leave, and and I was like, well, you can like nurse up here. We can chill. Like, it's totally fine and safe. We can see the parade. Had a great time. It's a very different sense of like community and connectivity, and it's intentional there. I still am in contact with people that I have met as a bartender in New Orleans and at parades on social media that we like regularly talk. They're like, I just, donated to some kids, like, I don't know, summer camp thing from a relationship that was just like, we paraded together. So I think it's very different here. Somebody once told me that Portland reminds them of, I've never been to like Sweden or Denmark or any of those Scandinavian countries. But they're like, we really have that kind of isolated, kind of distant vibe. And I see that. Like, it's not, we talk a good game, but like, we really struggle. So, living away has informed how I organized. And in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It's interesting, especially when you talk about this idea of just like actually slowing down to build community. It's something that I think about always, after it could have been helpful, you know, just something goes wrong after some petty little dispute breaks out or something like, it would have been nice to have, sometime before just sat down, actually established what we're trying to do. And, and even beyond that, actually taking some time to not do the business and actually like build some relationships and some trust with people.
Well, I mean, that's anti the way that business operates right now in real time, though. So it's like what we're fighting against, right? Like, we always hear like, I want a relationship. I'm like, my business is relationship building or my business is transactional. I don't think we like fundamentally understand these terms. Like, even a transactional relationship should be relationship building, especially if you're in business and if you want to stay in business. Whatever it is that you're doing. And if also clear communication makes a difference in how that actually can translate into real life. But that slowdown part, most of us are not willing to, as a collective, slow down.
It's strange with, I guess, like Oregon, because it feels like there's a lot of opportunities like to do that. And I've gotten into like hiking recently and some of these other things where it's like,
how is that?
I enjoy it.
You have like the shoes and everything.
Oh yeah, I
got the shoes and the backpack and like.
I don't do the backpack.
Oh,
okay. I got the boots. I got my water and just go. But I will say it's been good because like most of the hiking I do is usually with other people, so it's like it's a time to just like talk and again just kind of like build relationships. Come up with a lot of bad pilot ideas or very good pilot ideas depending on who you ask, but that's another story entirely. What I will say though is just again, I feel like Oregon with the weather, with like hiking stuff, be like other activities, being a coffee place and all this, it's like we have the means and we have sort of the things that are conducive to actually like slowing down if we wanted to.
We do.
It's a big if, but
but it's an intentional tap in, right? Like it's an intentional. Everybody has to tap in. Like, what would our society look like if everybody intentionally was like, okay, and this is everybody who is. If you have rode in an Uber in the last 6 weeks, if you have ordered from Uber Eats, Grubhub or whatever, DoorDash. If you have ordered something off of Amazon, I am talking to you. If you have done anything that sort of went to happy hour, went out to eat, you have a little small amount of expendable cash. If everybody who tapped into those services was like, all right, I'm going to maybe not order Uber Eats one time. I'm going to intentionally walk or take the bus and use those like $50 that they spent on some of these luxuries and put that $50, just $50 of everybody. Put that like, I'm going to put $20 into mutual aid. I'm going to put $15 into, community, like to a nonprofit or something, a regular nonprofit that I vibe with. And I'm going to spend the other amount of money to a kid that's in college. I'm just going to regularly just send in this little $20 or whatever. We would see this massive amount of change, but it would be everybody has to tap in to do that. And it's the same with like, if everybody was like, I'm going to intentionally one Saturday a month for 2 years. I'm going to commit to 2 years before I switch to another thing. One Saturday a month, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to show up and give back. And maybe volunteering, maybe you have a weird work schedule, so volunteering for you is going to have to look like you just picking up trash in your neighborhood. But if everybody can like really intentionally committed to that, we would see these massive shifts everywhere. And it's like really simple things that all of us, if we tapped into, like if everybody that's like on some of these apps was like, okay, I could do $50 and I could do 3 hours one day a month. we would see a whole transformation in the way that we live, that exist, and what's being funded and who's supported. Because people don't realize like how much like $10 from 1,000 people, that adds up really fast. If 5 people intentionally were sending a college student, $25 a month, that's going to be transformational in their experience at college and their stress. I don't think a lot of people even realize how many college students are just like on the verge, or they are hungry because they don't have enough money. I mean, I lived off of grapes and ramen when I was in college. It's definitely not great for an active mind. So anybody, if you know college students, Venmo them $20 today. Just dinner's on me. Just be intentional in that way. Like that, it's literally that much effort if we all tapped in. And this is not like new information. People have been saying this, and everybody who's right now up in arms about Roe versus Wade, who's up in arms about the EPA, who's up in arms about, and I can't even remember all of the insane things the Supreme Court's just done recently, intentionally tapped in these like little ways, we would see a whole different society in like 6 weeks. Like you can't just be mad about it on Twitter. Like you actually have to intentionally participate. And participation doesn't mean quitting your day job and like being like doing something really insane and intense and complicated. It could literally just be like, I'm gonna just, without even talking about it, Venmoing a college student regularly. I'm gonna pick up trash in my neighborhood. I'm gonna go like intentionally go to the school in my neighborhood's auction because it's a fundraiser. Like, and the amount of people that are not dialed in, tapped in is the problem. Like we've got 800,000 people in Portland and, 600,000 of them too busy to vote. I'm not even talking about the folks that are not registered to vote. Like we got to touch base with them and work on that. But like something that like literally impacts our taxes, our how we function as individuals, you can't, so it's like if we all intentionally tapped in just a teeny bit, we would have this incredible different experience. And we saw a little taste of that with like the way that mutual aid popped off and like really kind of got this resurgence, of interest and power during the pandemic. We need to like bring that energy back.
AJ, thank you again for being so generous with your time and your insights today. Before we let you go, can you just tell people if they want to, learn more or support Equitable Giving Circle, where they can go and, any news or updates that people should know about?
Please check us out at equitablegivingcircle.org. Again, that's equitablegivingcircle.org. Find us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook and a very neglected Twitter. Make a donation, one-time donation or a monthly donation. Any amount helps significantly. It is a big deal. And we are in the process right now of trying to buy a building. So all dollars are really helpful in that, in us buying a building. We are going to put this building in a trust and it's going to be a really exciting transformational way of like building a nonprofit and this resource in the community. Check us out. Come volunteer. We are needing volunteers Tuesdays through Saturdays generally, and need everything from drivers to folks helping with social media and fundraising. We have a pantry every Thursday that's open to our Black and Brown community. Right now it's at Alder Commons on 42nd and Fremont. And it happens Thursdays from 10 to 2. So come by and get some fresh produce. I'm also, this is like me stuff that's not UGC. I am launching a fundraising cohort. So I'm teaching other folks to fundraise later this month. So hit me up directly. And next month this is the first for me in a very long time, curating an art show at the Oregon Contemporary Center of the Arts, celebrating Black motherhood. So yeah, lots of stuff that I'm always doing all of the things. And if you need to volunteer, not just at EGC, I've got, Race Talks needs volunteers. Steps PDX needs volunteers. Mom Block needs volunteers. I know other organizations that also need volunteers. So hit me up. I'm always trying to build community in this, tattered world we live in.
Awesome. Well, yeah. AJ, thank you again, and
Thanks for having me.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and good luck and
Thank you.
everything with all the work you're doing.
It is an adventure.